I'm Sam, welcome to my channel. So I've come quite far today. This forest is one of the last remaining indigenous forests in the whole of Scotland. There's only 1% left, I think. When I first moved up here nearly 15 years ago, I had a house on the edge of this forest, and me and Roxy, my beautiful dog, and another dog that I rescued when I came here called Casper, another Weimaraner. We would run through these forests every day. There's a track that goes through the forest and down the ravine and back down to the water. And we used to do that every day. It's funny, I didn't know how rich I was, how lucky I was. So I wanted to make sense of a few things in this video. That's what this channel is, me trying to make sense of a world that feels very new to me. I have good days and bad days. It's not a linear progression in healing, but the good days are far more frequent than the bad days. And the bad days are always a surprise. It feels like, hitting a wall, like a solid object. And it's quite shocking, because I realise that the structure of an identity formed as a consequence of complex trauma, persistent, and that structure is still there. And it's almost, it feels immovable. It feels like this object within me that I have to move around and just acknowledge that it's there, it's in there somewhere. And occasionally I hit it and I think, oh, okay, it's still there, it's still there. But I think, in witnessing ourselves, we can create some space around the reality of that part of our identity, and in that space we choose a different response. The same feelings come up, the same triggers are there, less powerful. You just say, oh, okay, that's still there. And just be with it for a while until it passes, and then just move on. But one thing that has really changed is the terror that defined my life. That has changed. Irrational existential terror. It's irrational now, but it wasn't irrational at the time it happened. That terror was appropriate at the time, but it's no longer appropriate. So I don't know how, but that has drastically decreased. I still have rational fear, and I'm still twitchy. I've spent my life sitting with my back to the wall. So, stuff like this, is pretty big for me. Not to sit with my back to a tree, or to be in a corner somewhere so I can see everything. That's new. So that fear, that terror, is going. It's almost gone, I think. And I do feel a peace that is simply unknowable when you are in the grip of the trauma and the constant state of fight or flight. Everything's moving internally, mind, heartbeat, adrenaline, it's all moving. So there's no stillness. And so that peace, that unknowable peace, now seems, completely normal to me. And I think, when I think about what I'm going through and why these videos are so difficult for me, and they're still very difficult. It doesn't get any easier. Sometimes I think it is getting easier, and then I realise it isn't. It really isn't. Maybe it will eventually, but it's not right now. And I think that's because I've been trapped in a childlike state my whole life. Because the trauma I experienced started when I was born. And it went on until I broke contact. But then I realised something lately, that it's still going on even though I've broken contact. Because I'm perpetuating it in my own mind. So anyway, I was trapped in a childlike state. And so how I feel now is I'm emerging into a world that is completely new to me. And I'm trying to make sense of it in a way that a child would. And it's a complete mystery. And maybe that's how we should all look at it. And just like, I can't seem to find the words. Maybe you think I do quite well in these videos, but I struggle. And I really can't find the words that feel right. So I think that's why silence is much easier nowadays. I think also it's, what trapped me in that childlike emotional state. So my emotional responses to threat particularly were visceral, primal, childlike really. And so I'm learning how to feel. And feeling is the language with which we relate to the world, with which we understand our place in the world. So, I'm learning that language from a perspective not defined by terror, which is very strange. And the peace feels like it extends out from me into the world, and so it doesn't really feel necessary to grasp explanations anymore, and just to kind of just be with it all. But I think when we survive, there is a necessarily, survival is easy. It's imperative, it's animal, it's primal. So survival is easy. It's automatic. But when we survive, we reduce the bandwidth of our experience. We reduce the bandwidth of our ability to feel and even think clearly, because if we feel too deeply, we will feel the pain that we are avoiding. And if we think too clearly, that clarity will pierce the veil of our own illusions that protect us. So there's a necessary numbing. And what happened to me as I aged, as I repeated the trauma of my childhood, which was all I ever knew, was fear and isolation. And as I repeated, as that fear lived in that unworthiness and self-hate, self-blame, shame, lived in every single relationship I had, I could only really survive in desperate situations, because that's the only thing that made sense to me, was desperation. And so I just repeated it all through my life. And, I spent most of my life using drugs and alcohol from 8 years old onwards, just to cope, just to feel something that wasn't terror. And so as I repeated the same dynamic over and over again, my bandwidth of presence, let's call it that, my my presence in the world, my ability to feel just got narrower and narrower and narrower. And so the means by which I sought sensation and feeling became more and more and more extreme. The damage done. For what? Selfishness. And the tragedy is that, the isolation of self-protection, eventually becomes self-harm. And I think that's what I felt when it all came crumbling down. I could not live any longer in the way that I had been living all my life. It's just like there is an imperative to survive at all costs, whatever necessary. There is also a stronger imperative, and that is to yield, to surrender, to love. And I think that need overrides everything else. And, so eventually, the self-harm of self-protection, it just becomes too isolating, I think. And to look at my own experience, there was something inside me, some vital spark that still remained, that needed to make contact with something outside myself. Another person, the world. And that spark, I think, is truth. And so, I think that there is a cry inside us all. The cry of betrayal. At the core of complex trauma is betrayal. And the cry of confusion and anguish at that betrayal never goes, I don't think. But we have to find the words to give that cry in its primal nature a voice, a way to articulate it and speak it. And when we speak it, I think it loses its power somewhat. But just as we were betrayed as children, I think we betray ourselves when we live in isolation. We deny our right to life as we were denied our place in the world. We then deny it for ourselves. And that is a tragedy. So, what I've been going through is a disintegration of that identity, that was formed as a means of protecting myself and finding some safety. And as that's disintegrated, I think I said this in the last video, that raw centre, that need, that longing to connect and live in relationship was exposed. And I think that when I look back on the last 6 months particularly, that disintegration process, I hesitate to say it's almost complete, but I do feel like I'm reforming now. Maybe that's what we all must do, is if completely fall apart and reform. But you reform, we have to have an idea of ourselves. And the idea need not be as an identity, as a being forged in chaos as a consequence of complex trauma, running, surviving. That's if you live that way with that idea of your identity, you are one and the same with the trauma, perpetuating it in every second of your life. So we need to fall apart, release that scaffold within us, take it apart, become nothing, and then reform with a new idea. So for me, that new idea is one of loosely defining myself from moment to moment. I am here, I am aware, I feel, and that's enough really. And I am in relationship with people, this place, with each moment. And so it's really difficult at the moment. Something's moving behind me. I was expecting to see a Sasquatch. No, it's a duck. So, yeah, I found it really difficult lately to actually do anything because I just haven't felt like I'm a person. But now, I am forming a new idea, gently holding that idea, and starting to feel like I can create some traction and actually do something to rebuild my life. But the idea that makes the most sense to me is that I am a created being in the image of God. So if you're not comfortable with the word God, I don't know what else to use. God makes the most sense to me. An intelligence that waits for us to accept that we are a part of it. I mean, even if you're not comfortable with saying God and you believe in consciousness as this kind of non-deity but an intelligence nonetheless, that intelligence lives in every single thing around me right now. And so I'm comfortable with giving that intelligence character and identity, and to me that's God. And God has gifted me a life, intellect, heart, soul, and an opportunity to realise that my life lived selfishly in fear for whatever reason, whether that's trauma or not. A life lived selfishly is not a life. But a life lived in union with, accepting myself as an image of God in character, and I think is really where life begins. And we need to create space for that intelligence within us. And it's like, I think a lot of people fear that they will lose their individuality and personal autonomy when they surrender and accept God, and that they are a part of something far greater than themselves. But you don't. That's when you really begin to find your true identity, I think. I think of it this way, that we are all just so special and so unique, and maybe I think of it this way, that we're all a stained glass window of our own unique construction, and the light that shines through that window, illuminating it in its own unique, beautiful way, that light is God. So the more we open, the more we get past our own selfishness and open to that intelligence, the greater the light that lives within us. So I shall read a poem now and share a few more thoughts. I came here yesterday just to scout the place out, and it was blazing sunshine and the lock was completely frozen over. So this poem is an old poem. I think it's about 800 years old, and it was written by Hafiz. Love is the funeral pyre where I have laid my living body. All the false notions of myself that once caused fear and pain have turned to ash as I neared God. What has arisen from the tangled web of thought and sinew now shines with jubilation through the eyes of angels and screams from the guts of infinite existence itself. Love is the funeral pyre where the heart must lay its body. I'll read it again. Love is the funeral pyre where I have laid my living body. All the false notions of myself that once caused fear and pain have turned to ash as I neared God. What has risen from the tangled web of thought and sinew now shines with jubilation through the eyes of angels and screams from the guts of infinite existence itself. Love is the funeral pyre where the heart must lay its body. And what does that mean? All the false notions of myself that once caused fear and pain have turned to ash as I neared God. God is truth. All the false notions that we have of ourselves burn away in the fire of truth. Everything that's false, looking at my own journey, everything that was false, as it burns away, it hurts. It hurts because you don't want to let go of illusion. But whatever's left is true. So what burns away is the self. And what now shines with jubilation through the eyes of angels is the light of truth, I think. And that is what we are. What is that scream from the guts of infinite existence? It's not the scream of anguish, the scream of betrayal that fires us in our belly to keep fighting and survive. It's not that. It's that scream, the primal, I am, I feel, the agony of life, joy, love, loss. It's all agony. Thank you to everyone that comments under the videos and emails me, and thank you for your support and sharing your thoughts. I think I'll leave it there, and I'll see you soon. Bye.